thanks for bearing with me. I added one more last-minute slide. I couldn't resist. So again, I'm Analiese Burns. I'm the Habitat and Restoration Manager for the City of Bellingham. I have the distinct pleasure of showing you a bright spot in our urban environment of a restoration project and some of the results of that restoration project. It's the Squalicum Creek reroute, as Sue mentioned. And I can't go on without first acknowledging the important funders that were part of this project. Of course, the City of Bellingham, but also the Department of Ecology, State Department of Transportation, and the EPA. And I inherited this project. The credits really go to project engineer Mike McAllister of Interfluve. Craig Mueller is our city project manager. Renee LaCroix envisioned and helped implement this project, and Sarah Brooke Benjamin is really the force behind what I'm going to be talking about, which is the monitoring results. So she developed the protocol and implemented the monitoring. So a little bit of context, we've been talking a lot about the Nooksack River, but let's orient ourselves a little bit to what the Squalicum Creek drainage basin looks like. This is the Squalicum Creek watershed. So it's on the northern part of the city of Bellingham and extends out into the county. It originates in the Squalicum Mountain area, Squalicum Lake, and then flows into the city of Bellingham and enters the Bellingham Bay about 2 miles east of the Nooksack River. Here's a close-up of that watershed, and it drains about 22 square miles. It has a mix of land uses, and it has the highest potential for habitat improvements and fish stocks within the city of Bellingham. The city of Bellingham is a little bit different than what we've been talking about maybe the rest of today. Most of the drainage basins within the city are lowland streams, not the Nooksack River drainage basin itself. And of all the lowland drainage basins in the city of Bellingham, Squalicum Creek is the largest. And like most urban streams, it is impaired. So we have seen declining salmon runs, there's fish passage barriers, and it does not meet state water quality standards. So the city has begun a series of restoration projects to address those issues, and that series is called the Squalicum Creek Reroute, and we have multiple phases. We have constructed already phase 1 and 2, and that's what the monitoring results that I'm going to be presenting today. Phase 3 and 4 are to come very shortly, and I'll talk about that at the end. So these, you can probably see right here the 2 polygons on the right are phases 1 and 2, and the 2 polygons on the left are phases 3 and 4 to come. So we're going to concentrate on that phase 1 and 2 project site, and so I did a little close-up here so you can see what the pre-project conditions are. This is in the city of Bellingham, generally in the, here's I-5, and we have Sunset Pond and Bug Lake. Most of you probably and orient yourselves that way. This is James Street, and the creek went into Sunset Pond, traveled through Sunset Pond, under James Street, under I-5, and into Bug Lake, and then out of Bug Lake at Squalicum Parkway. And Sunset Pond and Bug Lake are man-made ponds. They are borrow pits from when I-5 was constructed in the 1960s, and they're extremely shallow. Here's a picture of Sunset Pond. We know that in 2011, the EPA adopted a TMDL for temperature for Squalicum Creek, and it's impaired. The creek is impaired for temperature, DO, and fecal coliform. And the TMDL is for temperature specifically. And in 2011, the adopted TMDL recognized that if the critical areas ordinance did its job and the riparian buffer was fully vegetated, that should address the temperature concerns in Squalicum Creek, and we should meet the temperature standards for Squalicum Creek. So the way that the temperature is calculated is a 7 DAD max, so 7-day average daily temperature. So it's 7 days, you take the maximum temperatures over 7 days and average that, and that's the standard. So if we look at the Squalicum Creek drainage basin, it's divided into different types of reaches. And when we look at and it looks like this is a little bit off here, so I'll just explain what the different colors mean. So the targets that we're looking at for temperature are based on the beneficial uses of the stream reaches. So the green is core summer habitat. So 16 degrees would be the target we're looking at for temperature, and that's outside the city of Bellingham. The blue is spawning, rearing, and migration, and generally that's the habitat we have within the city of Bellingham. And that target for temperature is 17.5 degrees Celsius. And then there is supplemental spawning, egg incubation in red, and again, mostly outside the city of Bellingham, and that would be a 13 degrees Celsius temperature target. So our project area is circled in black, and that the blue water bodies here are Sunset Pond and Bug Lake. And so that's within the blue range. 17.5 is our target for the 7 DAD max. And we exceeded that pre-project. I'll show you some graphs in a minute. Post-project, what we did, if you remember the pre-project, the creek went through Sunset Pond, down under James Street, under I-5 into Bug Lake. Post-project, we separated Sunset Pond from the creek because Sunset Pond and Bug Lake are known to be one of the highest thermal loading sources for the creek. So the TMDL requires that we concentrate on riparian buffer enhancement and really looking at providing shade to the creek. And the city decided to go above and beyond what the TMDL required and look at the other sources of warm water that could be improved. So Sunset Pond and Bug Lake were obvious areas to concentrate our efforts. So by separating the creek from the pond, we are removing that source from this section of the creek. And this is in this section, we routed it away from Sunset Pond, under James Street, through a new fish passable conveyance. This was a fish passage barrier down here, as well as here. So we avoided a fish passage barrier. A newly constructed passage under Interstate 5 that also was fish passable. And then at this point, it's back into Bug Lake. Bug Lake will be a future phase. So what this did was activate remnant channels. It provided better floodplain connection and then separated the stream from a known warm source of input into the stream itself. So this is a picture of the completed project. And if you haven't had a chance to look at it, there's a new trail that runs somewhat parallel to the project, the Squalicum Creek Trail. It's a great place to look at this project. Right now, the project is fairly visible because the riparian plantings have not achieved their full height, so you can peek through and actually see the project. There is a massive amount of large wood that was put into this system. And what's interesting about this restoration project is because we had a wide floodplain to work with, so through here, we're not, compared to what other urban areas have, we don't have much development confining us, so we could allow that stream to move. So we are reconnecting the floodplain. The logs are not secured down as much as some other urban projects, and so those can shift with the natural restoration through time of this stream. And thanks to the good work of the people before me, we're proud that this project won the APWA Environmental Project of the Year for 2016. So that was a national award. So to get to the nitty-gritty of, well, did this work? It's a nice fancy project with some good pictures, but did it improve temperatures? So Sarah Brooke, Benjamin, and our 2 WCC crews did a tremendous amount of work to try to quantify what has happened pre and post project. So pre-project is on the top part of your screen, and the colors just indicate that pre-project and post-project we have corresponding temperature loggers, both in stream as well as shade monitoring using densitometers. So pink corresponds to pink, red, it's the same river mile, even though the stream moved location, it would be the same river mile to compare pre-project and post-project. The goals of the monitoring were to collect baseline temperature and shade data, of course, and then to provide periodic feedback regarding the adequacy of temperature load allocations in Squalicum Creek. Here's some pictures. These are two of our WCC crew members, Andrew Hacker and Josh Osink. Andrew's on the left using the densiometer, and Josh is doing the in-stream temperature monitoring. We had data loggers and then calibration. I think he's doing a calibration right at that moment. So here is a results page, and I'll walk you through it. On the x-axis, there's time. So this is the summer period. We're looking at the summer in-stream temperatures. So this is from June 1st through the end of September on the x-axis. And on the y-axis is the 7 DAD max temperature in Celsius, going from 10 degrees Celsius to 36. So the red dashed line is that target that we're trying to hit, which is 17.5 degrees Celsius. We have 2 years of pre-project monitoring. Those are both in orange and they're dashed. What you can see is we're exceeding the 7 DAD max throughout the summer period, both years. And post-project, while we start out similar, it kind of maintains, rather than shooting up in the July time period, it maintains and it actually drops below the 7 DAD max, which is great. We're trying to get below. This is only 1 year of monitoring, but it's really encouraging for us to see, because the goal of the project was partially to have riparian cover. So we were taking it out of the lake, which is a warm water source, but the lake also did not allow riparian cover. And we expected after 5 years to start to see that temperature reduction, because we would start to see the shade of the newly planted plants. And we're seeing an immediate response from just taking it out of the warm water source to begin with. And hopefully over time, this will reduce even further as the plants start to grow and provide additional shade. So this is another view. This is a little bit further downstream. This is at the Inlet of Bug Lake. So we took it out of Sunset Pond with phase 1 and 2. The next phase would be to address Bug Lake. So what this is the Inlet of Bug Lake. So what happens between the outlet of Sunset Pond, which was here, where we saw a good temperature response, and this is the Inlet of Bug Lake. And so what we're seeing is that the riparian area in between the two lakes, there is some reduction from pre-project. Again, pre-project is orange and dashed, and post-project is blue and solid. But it's not definitive whether or not we're seeing a continued temperature reduction as we move downstream. And that is partially to be expected because we have riparian cover that still needs to grow up and shade. But it's still encouraging that it's a little bit lower. And then the last graph is at the outlet of Bug Lake. And so what is nice to see here is a couple of things. Again, we have the same time period on the bottom, June to September, DAD max on the y-axis from 10 to 36, and the same 17.5 target. What we're seeing is post phase 1 and 2 and pre-phase 1 and 2 project, they're very similar. So this tells us a couple of things. It tells us, number one, that the benefits that we saw in Sunset Pond was not due to an aberrant year of temperature in the stream. So it wasn't just because we had a cold year that year. Downstream, we're still seeing this similar pattern. The other thing that tells us is that we can now concentrate on taking the creek out of Bug Lake, because it is a much higher temperature regime, and we expect to see a similar benefit when we take the creek out of that part of the warm water body. So again, here's the project phasing. These were the encouraging results we saw. This is what we hope to do phase 3 and 4. Phase 3 is Bug Lake. Phase 4 is even a little bit further downstream. And if the state capital budget is passed as we anticipate, it will go to construction in 2019. So before I conclude, I know that this is the science day, this is the state of the science, but I heard loud and clear yesterday from several community members. They asked, what can they do? And I don't know if they were talking about the Nooksack Basin in-stream flows, or if they were talking about water quality in general in other places too. But I wanted to mention that there are some opportunities to be involved that the city is offering. So number one is if you can tell your friends and neighbors that understanding your watershed and knowing the stream is the first step. So we have a guided stream tour of Whatcom Creek tonight at 6 o'clock. You're welcome to go. There's some flyers in the back on the city table. We also have planting parties. A lot of them are on our urban creeks. And dealing with the temperature TMDLs that we have on our 3 urban streams. There's flyers on the back as well for that. And our table also mentions 6 specific steps that we can all take in our daily lives to deal with water quality going into our urban streams. So with that, I can take any questions.
Thanks, Analiese.